My name is Sarah Anderson and I'm 32 years old. For the past decade, I've been living what my family calls an impossible lifestyle, on what they believe is a modest salary. They've spent years questioning how I afford my penthouse apartment, my luxury car, my international vacations. They've whispered at family gatherings. They've made snide comments at holidays. And finally, my father decided to do something about it. He sued me. Not for a specific amount. Not for any debt I owed him. He sued me claiming I was committing fraud, money laundering, and financial crimes. He wanted the court to freeze my assets, audit my accounts, and expose what he was convinced was illegal activity. Because in his mind, there was simply no way his daughter, who he still saw as the quiet, unambitious girl from high school, could legitimately afford the life I was living. What my father didn't know was that I wasn't living beyond my means at all. I was living well within them. Very well within them. Growing up, I was the family disappointment. Not because I was a troublemaker or a poor student. I was a disappointment because I wasn't ambitious in the way my family valued. My older brother Marcus went to law school. My younger sister Jennifer became a doctor. My father ran a successful commercial real estate firm. I majored in mathematics. Pure mathematics. Abstract algebra, number theory, topology. Subjects that made my father's eyes glaze over at the dinner table. "What are you going to do with that?" he'd ask. "Teach high school." "Maybe," I'd reply. He'd shake his head in disgust. Waste of potential. After graduation, I got a job as a data analyst at a mid-sized tech company. Starting salary, $65,000. My family was underwhelmed. "Jennifer's starting salary as a resident is higher than that," my mother pointed out. "Marcus made $120,000 his first year at the firm," Dad added. I just nodded. I didn't tell them that I'd negotiated equity as part of my compensation package. I didn't tell them that I'd spent my evenings and weekends developing proprietary algorithms for analyzing market patterns. I didn't tell them anything. Because I'd learned something important growing up in my family. Information was ammunition. Anything you shared could and would be used against you. Any success would be minimized. Any failure would be magnified. So I stopped sharing. Within 2 years, the tech company I worked for was acquired by a larger firm. My equity package, which my family didn't know existed, was suddenly worth $3.2 million. I was 24 years old. I didn't quit my job. I didn't buy a mansion. I invested carefully, diversified thoughtfully, and continued working. I moved into a nicer apartment, not extravagant, just nicer. I bought a reliable car. I lived normally. But I also started my own investment firm. Quietly. No announcements. No business cards handed out at family dinners. Just me, my algorithms, and a growing portfolio of clients who appreciated what mathematical modeling could do for market predictions. By the time I was 28, my personal net worth had crossed $15 million. My investment firm managed over $200 million in assets for private clients. I'd been featured in 2 financial journals under a pseudonym. I'd spoken at 3 international conferences. My family knew none of this. To them, I was still Sarah, the data analyst who made okay money, but nothing impressive. They'd stopped asking about my work years ago. When I tried to explain what I did, their eyes would glaze over the same way Dad's had when I talked about mathematics. So I stopped trying. The turning point came when I was 29. A former professor from my graduate program reached out. He was advising a legal tech startup and they needed someone who understood both complex algorithms and financial modeling. Would I be interested in consulting? I said yes. That consulting contract turned into an equity partnership. The startup, Legal Edge Solutions, developed AI-powered tools for law firms to analyze case law, predict trial outcomes, and optimize legal strategies. It was revolutionary. Within 18 months, we had contracts with 15 major law firms across the country. One of those firms was Morrison & Hayes Law Group, one of the most prestigious litigation firms on the East Coast. They paid us $4.2 million annually for access to our platform and consulting services. I personally held a 30% equity stake in Legal Edge Solutions. The company was valued at $180 million. But I still showed up to family dinners in jeans and a sweater. I still drove a 4-year-old Audi. I still listened to my father lecture me about building real wealth and taking career seriously. The cracks started showing when I bought my penthouse. It was an impulse purchase, honestly. I'd been living in the same two-bedroom apartment for 5 years. I wanted space. I wanted a view. I wanted a home that felt like mine. So when a penthouse in a luxury building came on the market for $2.8 million, I bought it. Gish. My family found out when my mother mentioned she'd driven past my old apartment building and saw my car wasn't there. "Oh, I moved," I said casually at Sunday dinner. "Where to?" Jennifer asked. I told them the address. My father's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "That building? The one with the doorman and the rooftop terrace. That's the one. How much is rent there?" "I didn't rent. I bought." Silence. "You bought a condo?" my mother asked carefully. "In that building?" "The penthouse, actually." More silence. Then my father laughed. Not a happy laugh. A cold, disbelieving laugh. "With what money, Sarah?" "Your analyst's salary." "I manage my finances carefully," I replied. "Carefully." He set down his fork. "That building has units that sell for over $2 million. You're telling me you bought the penthouse on a data analyst's salary?" "I have other income streams." "What income streams?" "Investments. Consulting work." My brother Marcus leaned forward. He'd become a litigator just like Dad wanted. "Sarah, be straight with us. Are you in some kind of trouble? Is someone giving you money?" "No one's giving me money. I earned it." My father's face darkened. "You're lying. Or you're involved in something illegal. No one goes from making $60,000 or $70,000 to buying multi-million-dollar properties without something shady happening. My salary isn't $70,000. It hasn't been for years." "Then what is it?" I should have told them everything right then. I should have explained about the equity, the startup, the investment firm. But that old instinct kicked in, the one that said information was ammunition. "Enough," I said simply. And I left. 6 months later, I bought the Aston Martin. I didn't need an Aston Martin. My Audi worked perfectly fine. But I just closed a deal that netted my investment firm $8 million in fees, and I wanted something beautiful. Something that made me smile when I saw it in my garage. So I bought a midnight blue Aston Martin DB11. $240,000. I didn't tell my family. But of course they found out. Jennifer saw me driving it and immediately texted the family group chat. Within an hour my phone was ringing. It was my father. "We need to talk," he said. "Tomorrow." "My office." "This has gone far enough." The next day I sat in my father's conference room. He was there. Marcus was there. Even Jennifer had taken time off from the hospital to attend. "Sarah," my father began, his voice stern. "We're concerned. Very concerned. In the past 2 years, you've purchased a $2.8 million penthouse and a $250,000 car. You travel internationally. You wear designer clothes. All while claiming to work as a data analyst." "I don't claim to work as a data analyst. I own an investment." "We've looked into your supposed investment firm," Marcus interrupted. "There's barely any online presence. No major clients we can find. Nothing that would generate the income you're displaying." "You investigated me?" "We're trying to protect you," my mother said. "If you're involved in something illegal, we can help. But you need to be honest with us." I stared at them. "I'm not involved in anything illegal." "Then prove it," my father said. "Show us your tax returns. Your bank statements. Explain where this money is coming from." "No. No." My father's face reddened. "You're refusing to provide proof?" "I'm refusing to justify my life to you. I'm 32 years old. My finances are my business." My father stood up. "Then you leave me no choice. If you won't voluntarily explain, I'll have the courts make you explain." "You're going to sue me?" "I'm going to file a complaint alleging financial fraud and request a full forensic audit of your assets. If you have nothing to hide, the audit will clear you. If you're engaged in illegal activity, it'll be exposed." I stood up too. "Do what you feel you need to do." I walked out of his office that day knowing this would get ugly. But I wasn't prepared for just how ugly. 2 weeks later I was served with legal papers. My father, through his attorney Richard Morrison of Morrison and Hayes Law Group, was filing a civil complaint alleging that I was engaged in financial fraud, money laundering, undisclosed income tax evasion, potential involvement in organized crime. They were requesting an immediate freeze of all my assets, A complete forensic audit of my finances going back 10 years. Criminal investigation referral. The complaint was 47 pages long. It detailed every purchase I'd made, every trip I'd taken, every piece of evidence they'd gathered showing I was living beyond my means. It was thorough. It was damning. And it was completely wrong. I called my attorney, David Chin. We'd worked together on several business deals. He reviewed the complaint and whistled low. Sir, this is aggressive. Your father's really going for the throat here. Can they actually freeze my assets? They'll request it. Whether the judge grants it depends on how convincing their argument is. And honestly, on paper without context this looks bad. A data analyst living like a multimillionaire does raise red flags. So what do? We provide context. All of it. Tax returns, incorporation documents, client contracts, equity statements. Everything that proves your income is legitimate. How long will that take? To gather? A week. To present to the court? Depends on how fast we can get a hearing. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In those 3 weeks I watched my father's legal team work. They were good. Morrison & Hayes didn't become one of the top litigation firms in the country by being sloppy. They filed motion after motion. They subpoenaed banks. They contacted my employer. And they made it very public. Somehow the local business journal got wind of the case. They ran a story. Prominent real estate developer questions daughter's mysterious wealth. My phone exploded with messages. Former classmates. Professional contacts. Clients asking if everything was okay. I maintained my silence. I continued working. I prepared my defense. And I made one phone call. David, I said to my attorney, I need you to pull our contract files with Morrison & Hayes Law Group. Why? Because they're about to find out exactly who their anonymous investor has been for the past 3 years. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Civil courtroom, Division 3, Judge Patricia Holbrook presiding. My father sat at the plaintiff's table with Richard Morrison and 2 associate attorneys. I sat at the defendant's table with David Chin. The gallery had maybe 20 people. My mother was there. Marcus and Jennifer. Some business associates of my father's. A reporter from the Business Journal. Judge Holbrook called the court to order. We're here for the matter of Anderson versus Anderson, she began. Mr. Morrison, you may present your opening argument. Richard Morrison stood. He was in his mid-50s, silver-haired, with the kind of commanding presence that had won him hundreds of cases. He was expensive. He was good. And he was currently being paid with money from my company. Your Honor, Morrison began, this is a straightforward case of financial fraud. The defendant, Sarah Anderson, claims to earn approximately $200,000 per year as a data analyst. Yet in the past 2 years alone she has purchased real estate worth $2.8 million, a vehicle worth $240,000, and maintained a lifestyle that includes international travel, designer goods, and luxury accommodations. He walked toward the judge's bench. The defendant has refused repeated requests from her family to explain these purchases. She has refused to provide any documentation of legitimate income sources. And most tellingly, she has no visible means of generating wealth at this level. He turned to look at me. The plaintiff is not here to harm his daughter. He's here to protect her, and to protect the integrity of our financial systems. If Ms. Anderson is engaged in money laundering or other illegal financial activities, it must be exposed. Morrison pulled out a chart. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A. This is a detailed accounting of Ms. Anderson's known expenses over the past 3 years, totaling over $4.2 million. Compared to her claimed income of approximately $200,000 annually, the disparity is obvious and alarming. Judge Holbrook studied the chart. Ms. Anderson, do you contest these numbers? I stood. No, Your Honor. Those expenses are accurate. And your annual income is $200,000? No, Your Honor. My salary from my primary employer is $200,000. My total income is significantly higher. How much higher? David Chin stood. Your Honor, if I may. The defense would like to present our evidence at this time rather than waiting for rebuttal. Morrison objected. Your Honor, this is irregular. The defense should wait. I'll allow it, Judge Holbrook said. Mr. Chin, proceed. David walked to our table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibits 1 through 23. These are Ms. Anderson's complete tax returns for the past 10 years, showing all sources of income. He handed copies to the judge and to Morrison's table. I watched Morrison's face as he flipped through the first page. His eyebrows rose. As you can see, David continued, Ms. Anderson's total income for the past tax year was $4.7 million. The year before that, $3.9 million. All income properly reported, all taxes properly paid. Judge Holbrook looked up from the tax returns. Mr. Morrison, these appear to be legitimate IRS filings. Morrison was still flipping pages. Your Honor, we'll need time to verify. They're verified, David interrupted. Exhibit 24 is a letter from Ms. Anderson's CPA, a partner at Klein & Associates, one of the most respected accounting firms in the country. Exhibit 25 is a letter from the IRS confirming no outstanding audits or investigations. My father leaned over to whisper urgently to Morrison. Morrison nodded and stood again. Your Honor, even if these tax returns are legitimate, the question remains. Where is this income coming from? What is Ms. Anderson actually doing to generate millions of dollars? Excellent question, David said. Exhibit 26 is the incorporation documents for Anderson Investment Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisory firm founded by Ms. Anderson in 2019. Exhibit 27 shows the firm's registration with the SEC. Exhibit 28 is a list of current clients, redacted for confidentiality, but with total assets under management of $340 million. Morrison's face was getting red. Your Honor, this is Exhibit 29, David continued, his voice picking up momentum, is Ms. Anderson's equity stake documentation in Legal Edge Solutions, a legal technology company. She holds 30% equity in a company currently valued at $180 million. He pulled out another document. Exhibit 30 is particularly relevant. This is the Master Services Agreement between Legal Edge Solutions and Morrison & Hayes Law Group. Signed 3 years ago. Annual contract value, $4.2 million. The courtroom went very quiet. Morrison's face drained of color. He grabbed the document from David's hand. You don't know who the investors in Legal Edge Solutions are? David asked. That's because they requested anonymity. But Ms. Anderson, as a 30% equity holder and board member, can waive that anonymity for herself. He turned to face my father. Mr. Anderson, your attorney's firm has been paying $4.2 million annually to a company that your daughter owns 30% of. She's been making over $1 million a year just from your lawyer's payments. My father's face went white. He turned to Morrison. Richard, is this true? Morrison was frantically scrolling through his phone. We use Legal Edge, yes, but I didn't. The investors were anonymous, we never. His phone started vibrating. He looked at the screen. His face went from red to pale white. Your Honor, David said calmly, I believe Mr. Morrison is receiving notification that Legal Edge Solutions' largest investor has just withdrawn their capital from his firm's account. Morrison looked up at me. Actually looked at me for the first time all day. You didn't. I smiled politely. I texted my fund manager 20 minutes ago. Morrison & Hayes Law Group was one of 15 investments held by my private fund. As of 10 minutes ago, we've withdrawn all $4.2 million in invested capital from your firm's operating accounts. You can't do that, Morrison said, his voice rising. We have contracts, agreements. I have complete discretion over my fund's investments, I replied. And I prefer not to do business with organizations that accuse me of financial crimes. Judge Holbrook banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Morrison, compose yourself. But Morrison wasn't listening. His phone was blowing up. Text after text. His associate attorneys were checking their phones too, their faces going pale. My father stood up. Sarah, what did you do? I exercised my rights as an investor, Dad. The same way you exercised your rights to sue your own daughter for fraud. David addressed the judge. Your Honor, I think it's clear that Ms. Anderson's wealth is completely legitimate. She's a successful entrepreneur and investor. Everything is properly documented, properly taxed, and completely legal. We move for immediate dismissal of all charges and request sanctions against the plaintiff for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Judge Holbrook was reviewing the exhibits, her expression unreadable. Ms. Anderson, why didn't you simply explain this to your family when they first asked? I stood. Your Honor, I tried. Multiple times over the years. But my family had already decided who I was. The underachiever, the disappointment, the one who wasn't ambitious enough. When I tried to tell them about my work, they weren't interested. When I tried to explain my success, they assumed I was lying or exaggerating. I looked at my father. So I stopped trying. I built my life quietly. I didn't think I owed anyone, including my family, access to my financial records just to prove I wasn't a criminal. The judge nodded slowly. Mr. Morrison, do you have any response to the defense's evidence? Morrison was still staring at his phone. 3 more associates had rushed into the courtroom and were urgently whispering to him. From what I could hear, the withdrawal of $4.2 million had triggered some kind of operational crisis at the firm. Your Honor, Morrison said weakly, we may need to request a continuance. This new information requires review and denied, Judge Holbrook said firmly. You had 3 weeks to conduct due diligence before filing this lawsuit. The evidence presented by the defense is comprehensive and convincing. She looked at my father. Mr. Anderson, did you make any attempt to verify your daughter's income before filing this suit? My father opened his mouth. Closed it. She refused to show us her tax returns. She's a 32-year-old adult. She has no legal obligation to share her financial information with you. Judge Holbrook's voice was cold. You accused your daughter of serious crimes, fraud, money laundering, organized crime involvement, based solely on the fact that she's more successful than you believed possible. She shuffled the exhibits. Motion to dismiss is granted. All charges are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering the plaintiff to pay the defendant's legal fees in the amount of, Mr. Chin, what are your fees? $45,000 to date, Your Honor. The plaintiff will pay $45,000 in legal fees to the defendant within 30 days. She banged her gavel. This case is closed. And Mr. Anderson, I suggest you have a very long conversation with your daughter. One where you actually listen. The courtroom emptied quickly. My father tried to approach me, but I walked past him without a word. Morrison was surrounded by his associates, all of them frantically working their phones. Outside the courthouse, David put a hand on my shoulder. That was one of the most satisfying moments of my career. Thanks for the excellent work. What happens now? With Morrison and Hayes, that withdrawal is going to hurt them. That's their problem to solve, I replied. They took a case against me without doing basic due diligence. They should have verified who their own vendors' investors were. My phone rang. It was James Rodriguez, my co-founder at Legal Edge Solutions. Sarah, what the hell happened? Morrison and Hayes is calling emergency meetings. They're saying they need to renegotiate our contract. They can renegotiate with someone else. Draw up termination papers for their service agreement. 90-day notice as per contract. You're sure? They're one of our biggest clients. I'm sure. And James? Send an internal memo to all our law firm clients. Explain that we maintain strict ethical standards and don't work with firms that file frivolous lawsuits. Don't mention Morrison and Hayes by name, but make it clear what happened. That's going to send a message. Good. It should. I hung up and found Jennifer waiting by my car. Sarah, she said quietly. I'm sorry. We should have believed you. Yes, you should have. Dad was just worried. Dad was embarrassed, I corrected. He was embarrassed that his least favorite child turned out to be more successful than he could imagine. So instead of being proud, he decided I must be a criminal. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Isn't it? He sued me, Jennifer. He tried to freeze my assets. He told a judge I was involved in organized crime. All because he couldn't accept that I built something real. He loves you. He loves the idea of me he created in his head. He never bothered to get to know the real me. I unlocked my car. I need to go. Will you come to Sunday dinner? No. Sarah. I'm done, Jennifer. With the dinners. With the judgment. With pretending that this family operates on anything other than competition and criticism. I gave you all chances to know me. You weren't interested. Now it's too late. I drove away and didn't look back. 3 days after the court hearing, I received an email from Morrison and Hayes Law Group. They were officially terminating their contract with Legal Edge Solutions and withdrawing from all pending cases that might create a conflict of interest with their firm's investors. In other words, they just lost their most powerful legal tool and potentially dozens of cases because they'd sued me without doing their homework. A week later, Morrison himself called me. "Ms. Anderson, I'm calling to apologize. I should have conducted proper due diligence before taking your father's case. It was a serious oversight." "Yes, it was. I'm hoping we can resolve this situation. Perhaps Legal Edge Solutions would consider reinstating our contract." "No. Ms. Anderson, please. Our firm has been using your platform for 3 years. It's integral to our operations. We have hundreds of active cases that rely on your AI analysis tools. You should have thought of that before you stood in a courtroom and accused me of money laundering. I was representing my client." "You were representing your client poorly. A competent attorney would have verified the facts before filing a lawsuit accusing someone of multiple felonies. You didn't. You trusted your client's biased assumptions over basic research." I paused. "I'm not interested in doing business with your firm, Mr. Morrison. Goodbye." I hung up. 2 weeks after the hearing, my mother called. "Sarah, your father wants to apologize. Then he can call me himself. He's embarrassed. He made a mistake. He sued me, Mom. He didn't just make a mistake. He tried to destroy my reputation and my business because his ego couldn't handle the fact that I succeeded without his approval. He's your father. And I'm his daughter. The daughter he called a waste of potential. The daughter he dismissed for a decade. The daughter he accused of being a criminal rather than admit he was wrong about me." My mother was quiet for a long moment. "What can we do?" "Nothing. There's nothing to do. This is who we are, Mom. This is who we've always been." I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my penthouse office. The view overlooks the city, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows I can see all the way to the harbor. Legal Edge Solutions signed 3 new major clients to replace Morrison and Hayes. Our valuation increased to $240 million. My personal net worth crossed $25 million. My investment firm is managing $480 million in assets. I've been invited to speak at 4 international conferences this year. Forbes did a profile on me titled, "The Mathematician Who Revolutionized Legal Tech." I framed that article and hung it in my office. Not because I need the validation, but because it's a reminder. A reminder that I was never the person my family thought I was. I was never the disappointment, the underachiever, the one who needed their approval or their understanding. I was always exactly who I am now. They just never bothered to look. My father never called to apologize. We haven't spoken since the courthouse. Marcus sent one email asking if we could move past this. I didn't respond. Jennifer texts occasionally, but I keep my replies brief and polite. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But that's okay. Because I've built my own foundations. I have business partners who respect me. Clients who value me. Friends who know me. A chosen family that sees who I actually am, not who they need me to be. Last week I got an email from a young woman who'd read the Forbes article. She was 22, just graduated with a mathematics degree, and her family was pressuring her to go to medical school. "I don't want to be a doctor," she wrote. "I want to build algorithms. But everyone says there's no money in pure math, no future. Then I read about you. Can you tell me how you did it?" I wrote back immediately. I told her the truth, that it wasn't easy, that her family might not understand, that she'd faced doubt and dismissal and people who couldn't see past their own limited expectations. But I also told her that she could do it. That pure mathematics could open doors she didn't even know existed yet. That success wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about building something real for yourself. "The people who matter," I wrote, "will figure it out eventually. And the ones who don't? They were never going to be part of your real story anyway." I sent the email and looked out at my city view. My father thought he was protecting the family by exposing my fraud. Instead, he exposed the truth, that I'd outgrown them years ago and I'd been succeeding without them ever since. That's not the ending he wanted. But it's the ending I earned. And honestly, it's the ending I prefer. I wasn't hiding my success. I was watching, waiting to see who would believe in me without proof, who would support me without documentation, who would choose to know me rather than judge me. My family failed that test, but I didn't need them to pass it. I never did. I built my empire with my own hands, my own mind, my own relentless determination. And now I sit in my penthouse office, managing hundreds of millions of dollars, revolutionizing an industry and finally, living exactly the life I designed. Not the life they imagined for me. The life I chose for myself. And that's worth more than their approval ever could be.